right, we're back, and back to problem number 4. We're going to change our focus a little bit here. We're going to go to taxes now for the next 6 or 7 problems, and looking at their impact on buyers and sellers, what they have to pay, and who pays the portion of the tax, or the largest proportion of the tax. So let's start out with number 4 here. It says, if the government levies a $500 tax per car on sellers of cars, then the price received by sellers would. All right. I want you to draw this always. These tax problems are made for diagrams, and they're really going to help you figure out what's going on here. All right. We have a supply curve here. We'll draw S0. We have a demand curve here, which I'll put in blue. Let's call that D0. We have our quantity on this axis, price on this axis. We have some equilibrium. We'll call this P0. And we have some equilibrium quantity. We'll call it Q0. Again, I'm taking time to draw this because it's important that you draw this, just so you set yourself up to look at the problem more logically. All right. The government imposes a tax of $500 per car. That's going to shift the supply curve back by $500. There's no question. So we're going to call this supply plus tax. All right? And there's no question that this distance right here is the $500 tax imposed by the government. So let's label that. So that's $500. But don't get caught up yet. Don't race ahead and try to answer this. We know it's $500 because it's parallel. Every unit, every car sold has to go up by $500. All right, there's our diagram. Now, let's look at the answers. The price received by sellers of cars would decrease by less than $500. Price received by sellers. So how do you figure that? Well, this is the new supply curve. So you go to the new supply curve. You look at the price here. We'll call that P, and call it P consumers. I'll tell you why in a minute. You're going to go down here because you know this has to be the distance between the two curves, and that has to be $500. And I'm going to put, PS for price received by sellers. Now, A says that the price received by sellers decreases by less than $500. Is that right? Yes, it is right. Why? Because look, here's the original equilibrium, and because the supply curve shifts up by $500 does not mean that the sellers are going to have to pay $500. What happens is the quantity demanded falls because consumers don't like the higher price, all right? So the price doesn't rise by the entire $500. It rises by less. How much less? Well, this distance right here is $500. So of the $500, this portion right here is the part that's paid by consumers. And this portion right here is the portion of the tax paid by the sellers. In other words, the sellers clearly get less than P0. P0, let's say, we can call it anything. Let's say the price was, what's a car? Let's say it was $20,000. All right? Now, the sellers aren't going to get $20,000. They're going to get $20,000 less this amount right here. But that's not $500. $500 is the entire distance. In other words, the burden of the tax is being shared part by consumers and part by suppliers. So suppliers do not pay the full burden of the tax. They only pay a portion of that tax. So A is going to turn out to be correct, but let's keep going. Decrease by exactly $500. Well, that's how they want to trick you, right? They want you to see that, oh boy, the supply curve shifts up by $500. That means suppliers are going to get this price right here. That's $500 less. Wrong. It's not $500 less than the original equilibrium price. Whatever that was, I just gave the example of $20,000, but it could be any number. The point is, they'll get something less than $20,000, or whatever number that is, but it's not going to be $500 less. It's going to be less than that. Decrease by more than $500. Well, that's really a dumb answer. I mean, there's no way the tax is going to cause a decrease of more than $500 when the tax is only $500 itself. So we can eliminate C pretty quickly, and D, increase by an indeterminate amount. So the price received by sellers is going to increase by an indeterminate amount. Well, the price is not going to increase. They get you because you're looking at this graph, you say, oh, well, yeah, that price by sellers is going to increase by more than $500. It's going to increase up to here. No, this is the price paid by consumers, whatever it is. The government then gets its $500 tax, and after the tax, that's what the government gets. So when you go to the store, for example, and buy something like, and there's a sales tax, the retailer will take the $1.08 because we're here in New York or thereabouts, all right? But 8 cents goes to the government. That gets paid to the government, okay? And so the sales tax is just what they're talking about here. That's the part that goes to the government, but it's not going to be the full amount of the tax. I mean, the supplier is not going to pay the full amount of the tax, except for very specific conditions. And we'll come to those at the end of the lecture. Okay?